Hey sis, let me ask you something. Did you ever feel like no matter how hard you try, you just cannot stay patient with your kids, especially when things don't go the way that you planned? Maybe you catch yourself thinking, nothing ever goes the way that I want. My kids are doing this on purpose to upset me. Why can't I just get it together like other moms? And before you know it, the negativity turns into a frustrated, ugly attitude. You start blaming your kids for your reactions, trying to control their behavior, the schedule, and the outcome, holding yourself and them to unrealistic expectations. And when that day falls apart, so do you. I used to live there too. The constant negative thinking and defeated mindset kept me stuck, talking to my family in an ugly tone, feeling frustrated, and then drowning in shame and guilt afterwards. But here's what changed for me. The Bible says in Romans 12:2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I've always wondered how do we actually take our thoughts captive and renew our mind? Here's the thing. Real change doesn't start with your kids behaving better or life getting smoother. It starts with your thoughts. That's exactly why I created the Renewed Mindset course for Christian moms. This is a 5-week self-paced course created specifically for the mom who feels trapped in negativity, controlling tendencies, harsh self-talk, and impossible expectations. The mom who loves her kids deeply but struggles with her thoughts, her attitude, and her reactions when things do not go her way. Inside this course, you will learn how to take your negative thoughts captive and replace them with life-giving biblical truth so you can show up with patience, calm, and Christ-like compassion even when your kids are testing every last nerve. The course officially releases in January, but the pre-sale is open right now. The price will go up by $50 in January. When you join during pre-sale, you will also get instant access to 4 positive motherhood affirmation recordings to help you begin renewing your mind today. If you are ready to stop letting negativity and control run your motherhood and start walking in peace, this is your next step. You can find the link in the show notes. Abby, welcome to the podcast. I am so thrilled to have you here. I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, how many kids you have, where do you guys live, and what your days look like as a mom.
Sure. So my name is Abby. I have 5 daughters, 10, 5, 3, 3, and 1. Yes, that is a twin 3-year-olds there. I'm home full time with them, and I am homeschooling our oldest 2 as well. That piece is relatively new to us as of 2025, so we're all still figuring out what that looks like. And my husband, we've been married 13 years, and he works an unconventional schedule at a nuclear power plant nearby. And so those are 12-hour shifts. So he's gone for pretty long stretches of time where it's just me and the kids. And so that can be tricky sometimes. And then just recently, in the last month, my mom moved to town. And so that has been a big change. And she's been really helpful with the kids and helping us get where we need to be and giving me breaks and things like that. But that has been a relatively recent change in the last month or so.
And what a blessing that your
Yeah.
is able to live nearby now and help you out with your kiddos when your husband is at work, because that's a lot. 5 kids, homeschooling, toddler 3-year-olds, twins right in there, and then a baby that's learning to walk and get into
Yeah.
everything, and homeschooling. That's just a lot all at once. So sounds like a
Yes.
recipe for a lot of chaos.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what was going on in your life in the springtime when you said, I cannot keep doing this anymore and I need help. Walk me through a little bit of what was going on at home, what was going on with you internally that you decided to reach out for help.
So, towards the end of last summer was when I had our baby, and adding a child is always an adjustment for a family. But we were managing all right, figuring things out. But once winter rolled around and we made the change to homeschooling for our oldest, suddenly we were all home all the time, all 5 kids and me during these long, dreary dark, late winter days. We're in Illinois, and so winter kind of drags around until like March sometimes. And so I would find myself just like frustrated and annoyed right out of bed. And I wouldn't be able to really shake that feeling for long, if at all, throughout the day. I was impatient with my kids and critical. And I feel like the word trapped was just always running through my mind. I'm trapped here. I'm stuck here because of my quote unquote needy kids, which in hindsight, they're just regular kids and there's just five of them. But that negativity was just running rampant in my mind and my heart. And it felt like once I was triggered by a kid telling me no for the thousandth time or melting down about things that felt very small to me, I would shout and yell and grab them up quickly and roughly. And it definitely tended to happen towards the second half and even just like dinner bedtime area of the day where things had just built up all day and then it would all come crashing down at the end. And I saw the pattern, but I also somehow didn't anticipate it and make changes about it. It just felt justified and of course, and this is how I feel, and this unshakable sense of this is just how it is. This is how I feel until, of course, we got through bedtime and everybody was somewhat in their beds. And then all of that defensiveness would crash and I would feel super ashamed, crushed by guilt, just crying on my bed. How did it come to this again? How did I get to this place again? Why can't I stop doing this? I guess this is just who I am. Like a lot of these stuck negative feelings and thoughts about myself. And so eventually, I think I Googled Christian mom anger or something like that, some combination of keywords where I was just like, I need to figure this out. Something has to change. My friends around me were experiencing this the same way I was. And I just did a quick Google and your podcast came up. And so I just couldn't believe how perfectly you would describe my feelings and my home. It was like, you are a fly on our wall. And I was like, okay, finally, this is a thing. I'm not totally alone. Let me listen to this. I'm sure this will be great. Because when I would listen, I would feel a sense of freedom and like, oh, okay, there's something to be done about this. And I would try to implement it. And maybe for the first half a day, it would be helpful. And then real life would come back and I'd find myself in the same place. And I'd wake up another week and be like, oh, a new podcast. Great. Let me listen to it while I get ready for the day. By the end of the day, we're back where we started. But there was one particular episode where you were interviewing a mom who had just completed the coaching program. And she mentioned something to the effect of, I knew that if nothing changed in the next 5 years, my family would be in trouble. And that concept really hit home as it's now spring and we're coming around on my oldest birthday and she turned 10, which feels kind of big because she's, double digits. But the 5 years of her life, she'll be 15. We'll be in the heart of teenagehood. Everybody tells me that's a really difficult time. And I knew that if these patterns continued, there wouldn't be a trusting relationship for her and I. And my other one would be 10 already herself. And just the imagination of that scenario where they continue to grow up with a mom who is doing these things and feeling these things in these very formative years. All years are formative, but definitely in the 10 to 15 range, it's a big, big time. There just wouldn't be much relationship left. There wouldn't be a foundation for us to navigate her coming of age years. And so that's what I really started to consider joining the program.
That's deep. That's a lot happening. And I get that response a lot actually from a lot of moms. That is the question that really sticks with them. If nothing changes in 5 years, what are things going to look like between you and the kids? And that usually really gets people. Some women end up saying, I probably won't have a relationship with my kids. I'd probably end in divorce because the anger is affecting marriage as well. And I don't know about you. I know there were some talk between us about how some of that frustration you would take out on your husband, but it seemed like it was mostly geared towards your children. If you feel comfortable, can you share with me a little bit about how was anger showing up in your home with your kids?
I feel like my anger and negativity, because I feel like you can't really separate those, at least in my experience. It was both. That was really just creating distance and coldness between me and my kids. The negativity just set them up as obstacles to my freedom. They were always in the way, crying about a broken toy or somebody's looking at me, meltdowns about that. And it just felt like, I don't need this. Get over it. It just felt like there wasn't a softness and a compassion towards the things that matter to them. And that just put distance between us. I would imagine I just wasn't very approachable with things that were tender in their own hearts. And those things just bred resentment. And that resentment was a piece of the puzzle with my husband as well. Like you said, his long hours being gone, to me, it just would always feel like, ugh, you get to be gone 14 hours a day. You get to be gone 14 hours a day. Like this idea that like he was off having a vacation for his whole work day because there were no children at work. And those thoughts and feelings just had free reign. There was no sense of changing them. They just felt inevitable. They felt like the truth. They just felt like my inner monologue, and that was what it was. And I tend to be a pretty practical person and down to earth. And so the idea of, oh, you could change those thoughts, it was like, no, I can't. They're just there. That's just how they feel. And so there was a lot of distance between me and my kids, I think. And then, of course, once I was angry at them, like big angry at them, I was not a safe person. And then once I crumbled under the weight of my actions, then I didn't want to be around them anyways. If I had gotten mad at them in the afternoon, I didn't really want to spend time with them because I was ashamed. You spend all day telling your kids, be kind and gentle hands, and even if you're upset, it's not okay to hit. And then you go and explode on them. I just felt like I don't want to look them in the eye. I'm not good enough to go and be with them now. And so it was just a lot of tension in our house most of the time.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the next question. How were you feeling about yourself as a mom? We talked a little bit about that inner talk. You were feeling ashamed of your actions. You felt stuck, like you were just stuck in this pattern. Was there anything else? You mentioned like more negative self-talk. I'm just asking you because I know there's other moms that are listening to this and they're like, I relate with that so much. Like that is me. And so I'm just curious what other thoughts you had about yourself as a mom, because I know later on in the program, you would reach out to me. You're like, I still had a hard day with the kids. I did raise my voice, but I'm not filled with all this shame and remorse afterwards. I'm not stuck in that pattern. So, what was it like before you joined the program?
I think I had a pretty deep belief that I was a bad mom. And if we had been having a conversation about things that were difficult, I don't think I would have expressed that. I feel like it was sneakily hidden under other things. But I think that was the core of it. I thought I was just bad at this, and there was no redemption available. It was just like, this is what comes out when I'm left to myself. And this is out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Like, this must just be who I am, which in hindsight is just letting my sin and flesh define me a little bit. There's other factors going on. Not all of it was due to sin, but I was just letting my sinful choices define me rather than going back to the cross and remembering who God has said that I am. I would often question, like, why, Lord? Why did you build my family and give me these kids in this timing in this way? Because our family has been built by God. If we went through the backstory of the development of our family and went the timing of everybody, there are pretty clear things where it's like, yeah, that wasn't up to us. Like, God did that. God orchestrated that. And so it just felt like, why did you do this? I am not cut out for this. I felt like I was definitely screwing them up with my anger and rage and choices. I know the trends of kids who are in rough homes or abusive homes, not that this was a case of abuse, but what they see from their parents gets translated into their own lives, be it through their own choices or through the partners they choose. And it felt like the nails in the coffin. It's over. Can't come back from this, which is just a hard place to be day to day.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It is a really hard place to be, especially day after day. It's not just like, oh, I have a hard moment once in a while. It's like that is where I'm living, and that's really hard. Was there a moment where something happened, or was it just like building up over time?
There was definitely building up over time. There, what that one podcast episode I referenced, so I feel like was it had combined with a really rough bedtime the night before, and then that podcast the next morning. And it was a culmination of this just keeps happening. And with that 5-year window in mind, this will keep happening. If something doesn't change, nothing changes, right? That whole idea of I'm not just going to wake up and this is going to be over. God can do miracles, but most likely I'm not just going to wake up and find myself a different type of mom with a completely different mindset and different habits and all these things. I would have to make changes somehow.
Yes. And that's the thing. We need to do our work on our end, and then God meets us right there. We can't just be praying like, oh God, just fix this issue, and without putting any effort in on your part. It's like, Lord, help me be generous, but then you're not doing anything on your end to be more generous. Lord, help me lose weight, and you're still going and buying junk food and keeping it in your house. You got to take your step into that direction, and God is going to meet you there, and He's going to honor that. And so I wanted to ask you, you got on a call with me, you booked a consultation call with me. Did you have any hesitations or like nervous about signing up for the program? Was there anything that was holding you back, like maybe the time commitment, the money, wondering, is this even going to work for me? Was there any hesitations on your end?
Yeah, I think it was kind of scary to take the leap and admit that this is something I couldn't handle on my own. It was definitely scary to be vulnerable with you. We've still not met in person. We're not real life friends. And then, okay, sure, you can walk me through this. So the idea of opening up to a stranger and these really like tender, vulnerable things that are going on in our home, and definitely was nervous about the financial investment too. It felt like putting that money in there wasn't super easy for us to do that. And so there was a couple pieces. One, spending that much money on an intangible thing. This isn't something I can hold up and show to anyone, but I would say it's definitely more valuable than something I can hold up to somebody because it's going to impact my kids and my grandkids should they ever come. But it also felt scary to try because what if it doesn't work? I've discovered this recently. Like, I'm just not very interested in trying things new because what if I fail? Like, I'm just not interested in things not working, which is not a great trait. And I'd like to see that change a little bit. But that was part of it. It was like, what if I try this and I find out that I am, in fact, unredeemable and unfixable. And this is just who I am. Like, I could put in the 12 weeks and follow all the steps, and then we're still in the same place. And that just felt really scary too.
And it is really scary when we are doing something we haven't done before. And for me, when it comes to something like that, I feel guilty spending money on myself, especially a big amount. And I have thoughts, well, I should be able to figure this out on my own. I feel like a failure that I need someone else's support. That's my thought process. I should be able to figure this out on my own. Other people somehow do, and I'm a
Hmm.
failure that I don't. And we could use that money for family vacation. We could use that money to invest. There's so many other things you could use that money for. And then I feel guilty that it's being spent on me, just like on me as a mom, where I have so many other things they could go towards. And
Yeah.
so that is like where my thought process is when it comes to things like that and investing. And I've actually invested in myself to get here as a coach. Part of it was like therapy, and part of it was life coaching as well. I did not get here by not doing any of this work. I've done the things to teach you ladies, and I've done the investments that I'm inviting moms to do. I've done that myself. And that always feels scary, especially if you're doing something completely new. And change is scary. It
Yeah.
feels uncomfortable. And it's meant to feel uncomfortable because you've never done it before. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, I feel nervous, I feel scared, it feels so uncomfortable, it's meant to be. We never grow in our comfort zone. It's always when we feel uncomfortable, which leads me to ask you the next question. What was it like when you joined Conquers to Mom coaching program? When you joined in the very beginning, what was it like for you?
I think in the beginning, it felt good to have something tangible to do. It felt good, specifically like the coaching, the coursework. It was just for 3 to 5 things a week, 3 to 6 things a week, like to work through in our own time. But also, there is accountability. Like I knew I had to get to it. And that was a big piece, I think. I was just talking with some friends about this, and I feel pretty confident I wouldn't have made it through the whole coursework if there wasn't that accountability. And I do think it was all so valuable. And so I'm glad I had the accountability. But in the beginning, it felt good to have something to do, finally tangible to like combat this thing. Also, it was like a lot of relief as well once we got through the first like week or two to realize is it just me? And you say that on your podcast all the time, and I probably would have agreed with it, but something about being on a coaching call with actual other human beings on the line, seeing their faces, hearing my own experiences in them, like hearing them share about their days and be like, oh, yep, been there, I know exactly what you're talking about. That support was just like a breath of fresh air. And those concrete steps on my own time, plus the coaching calls, and of course, being able to connect with you over Voxer day in and day out, it was so helpful to have a path to follow out of this. It was like being lost in a forest and you can't figure your way out. You know, there is a way out. You just can't find it. And because your life is just so full, I couldn't find that path on my own, but I could follow someone else on that path. I just couldn't forge it fresh for myself. And so it was just really, really helpful and life-giving, I feel.
Yes. And I think most moms say that coaching calls is their favorite part of the program, and being surrounded by other women that are doing this work with you, that are also intentionally working on breaking these reactive anger patterns and cultivating a peaceful home with God's help. And so I'm so glad that you are on the other side. And so I want you to share a little bit about how are things going right now. You finished the program, you ended up enrolling when there were bonuses. So you
Mhm.
got the 16 weeks of actually working together. Now you completed the program, you graduated. So tell me how things are now. What is the home dynamic? How are things between you and the girls? How is homeschooling going? Like just everything. Tell me a little bit how things are going now.
It was through the summer that I did coaching. We ended school actually on the same day I signed up for coaching. So we spent the summer without our school rhythms and just getting back into them now. And it's definitely hard. I'm homeschooling my first and second now. My second daughter is in kindergarten. So that's like a new challenge. And it occurred to me the other day, I do not want to know what it would have been like this fall if I had not had done the coaching program this summer, because it's not easy to homeschool too. They both need a lot of support and help focusing and reading the directions for the little one. And it just feels like a lot. And so having the skills and the groundedness to cope with that is so helpful. So school is still challenging because we are only 3 or 4 weeks in.
And you have toddlers
Yes,
and a
and then
baby.
yes, that is key. If it was just the two, that would be another thing. But the 3-year-olds who are still getting used to me being a little more unavailable to them during school time, and the 1-year-old who is very mobile but very unaware of the dangers of the world. So yes, it is challenging. School hours in our house are challenging and sometimes long, but like I have the skills to think through that and say, okay, where do I need a break? What do I need in this? Not just we will achieve, we will accomplish, we will check off our homeschool boxes. Like to view myself as a human and not a robot, them as humans and not robots, immature humans at that, giving them the space to be less than adult because they're not. And actually, like from the summer work schedule that my husband had to the fall work schedule, we've actually gone, maybe he's become less available than he was this summer, even, which I did know was coming. And that was part of my motivation to sign up too, because it felt like if this is where we're at now, and I know that he's about to get a season of long, long hours this fall, it's not going to be pretty. And so I'm very thankful to have done this work and have the skills and the awareness and the relationship with Jesus that I have to be able to get through this pretty challenging season with less sin, less tears that are not necessary. We don't have to go through the angry rage tears that can be set aside, and we can just keep the crying about someone looking at me tears
Mm-hmm.
from the
Yeah.
3-year-olds.
Yes, and you had told me when we did the 12-week call, when your husband would come from work, he would come home with you feeling really frustrated and negative and complaining about the kids. And then you were sharing with me how he pulled up to the house the other day and the kids ran up to him and you guys had music blasting and you guys were dancing and you were waiting for him, like with a smile on your face and the kids. And how was that for you? Because that's a big change.
Yes. Yes, that was a really fun night. It was just the playfulness that I have like worked to cultivate, and it feels like very small. Like it feels like it hasn't grown as much as I wanted, but growth is growth regardless. And yeah, being able to have that moment where there were still dishes in the sink and we had done all these things and bedtime was coming, which that impending feeling of bedtime would often set me on edge. But just like taking that moment to play with them and my kids, they think it's just so funny when I dance still because it has not been part of our experience. Like that idea of, oh, mom can let loose and mom can move like that. That's so funny. Like I taught my 10-year-old the Macarena the other day. And I felt like this is the education she needs. We need to make sure she understands what this dance is. And she
Mm.
just was tickled that I would pause and teach her this dance that is very old. And I knew from my childhood. And so that was really fun to have that moment where everybody was excited to see dad dancing around. And then even the baby thought it was fun to be danced with. And that was a special night.
And I'm sure it feels so much better for your husband to come home to that
Yeah.
than coming home, walking through the door, hearing screaming, yelling,
Yes.
and
Yes.
whining and slamming doors and all the things.
Yes.
How do you feel about yourself as a mom today?
I feel like I'm a phrase that I've come back to a little bit in my journaling, grounded and growing. I am still fighting my tendency to focus on my shortcomings because I do still get angry and I make choices I wish I hadn't with my kids when I'm angry, but they're not as often and they're not as intense and I don't feel stuck afterward, which those three things I feel make all the difference. So grounded and growing is what I've been coming back to. I don't feel as blown about by every wind of emotion, which there are many with 5 girls in various stages of emotional development. And I guess myself included on that. But I feel the shame that would hold me down after. Like Jesus has really taken that away. I feel those are the 2 words I use to describe myself now.
And I think growing is always going to be there. We're always growing. We will never become perfect, only when we're in heaven. We're
Yeah.
constantly growing on this path. But so I was telling you the other day, it's like when you see a baby, they look the same every single day. But then you look at the photos like 3 months ago, you're like, oh my goodness, they've grown so much. Same thing for you. It seems like, oh, these little changes, we don't really notice them every day. But if you look back to when you first joined the program, it's such a massive difference. Just even your face lights up as the way you talk about motherhood and about your girls and your home versus just feeling so defeated when you first
Hmm.
joined the program, feeling like miserable and stuck, just like you were saying
Yeah.
those words, feeling lost, miserable, stuck. And now you know that there is a path. And even if you do slip back a little bit, you know what needs to happen to get back on track. You
Hmm.
know the tools. You can always go back to the coursework. And there is further support too, but you are now in a place where you know what to do instead of feeling completely stuck and wandering in that forest where you don't know where the way out is. What is the most powerful thing that you learned in the coaching program that you're like, that made the biggest difference in you and the way you showed up?
I think there's kind of one thing came to mind that was more practical and one less. The less practical one is like my kids having a hard time with things. It isn't my fault that they're having a hard time, and it doesn't reflect on me or my motherhood. Like they can just find something difficult or unfair or whatever it is. And that's not personal. That's not about me. Like that separation of they're having a hard time, not like trying to give me a hard time. Like they're really not trying to be difficult. They are just having a hard time with this. Sometimes those feelings do make things more difficult. They make leaving or going or cooking dinner more difficult. That is like not their intention. It sounds very simple and clear to me now, but it makes such a difference to me when inevitably somebody is upset and it's not personal. They're not making a judgment call on my this, that, or the other. And their inability to cope with whatever it is not because I've mothered them poorly. And maybe because we have a lot of feelings swirling. I don't know. But that felt like a really big deal to me that trickled out and gave space for me to make another choice instead of getting defensive and frustrated and why aren't you over this yet? And why can't you cope with this yet? Because before it felt like they can't cope with this and that's my fault. Like there was just something about that connection for me. And then a more practical thing, I can and should take actual breaks where I'm not seeking to squeeze every ounce of productivity out of my day that I can. It felt we would end breakfast and I'd be like, okay, let me like start a little laundry and sweep up the floors and do this one thing. And then we'll jump into school. Okay, school's done. Okay. Oh, let me like throw this on and let me go switch the laundry over. And it just felt like I was trying to squeeze tasks everywhere throughout my day that I just didn't have to. It's okay that not every second is measurably efficient and productive. It's actually really good that I go and sit outside and on the patio swing for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and don't do anything or read a book because I like to. That's really important. And I deserve to do those things as a human being.
And we talked with you specifically having those pockets of before you're transitioning into something that will take a lot of your energy, having a short break. Something
Yeah.
that like is calming and decompressing to you before you transition to homeschool or before you transition to making dinner, before you transition to like bedtime routine when you're solo parenting, especially having a couple of those breaks during the day. It could be 5, 10 minutes, but for you to just calm your nervous system and literally just take a break, sit on the couch for a little bit and just watch your kids play, step outside, get some fresh air, maybe go to the bathroom, wash your face with cold water. It
Mm-hmm.
is just something that will help you transition from one task to another, especially when the next task takes a lot of your energy. So I know
Mm-hmm.
that was really helpful for you, especially before bedtime. And you did have to do bedtime a lot by yourself with your husband's work schedule. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the thing that was the hardest for you. You have come a long way. So now that we're wrapping this up, what would you say to the mama that's listening who feels stuck in anger, feels hopeless, and she knows that she needs that further help and support, and she's just scared to take the next step?
It's worth it. You don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to do this alone. Your wisdom and guidance following you out of this forest in the strength of the Lord, you can change. God can heal you and change you. And it's worth it to take that leap and invest in yourself. Whether some people that's going to be a more financial question or an energy question or both, but it's worth it. And it's worth it for your kids, it's worth it for your marriage, and it's worth it for yourself. I don't walk around with that weight of shame on my shoulders the way that I used to. And I wake up and there's an optimism about the day, which I've always like proudly, I'm not an optimist, like kind of scoffed at the sunny side up people of the world, but like I am moving closer towards it. There's a lightness and a hopefulness that I get to live my days with. And it's better to live in that way. And I think it's what Jesus died for, is for us to live in that freedom without the chains of our sin holding us back. And there's just freedom to be had. And if this is what God is leading you to, then go for it.
Yeah, yes. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that this coaching program is not for everybody. Some moms can listen to the podcast and then implement the things that they learn. And that's what it's there for. And some of you that are listening to this, it's like you are trying and you still are struggling, and you need somebody to hold your hand and guide you out of that forest. And that's what I'm here for, to support you step by step along the way. And you get to decide. I'm not here to talk you into it. It's your choice, it's your decision. And I'm just praying for God to make it clear to you and your husband that this is the next best step that your family needs. So, Abby, thank you so much for coming and just sharing your story and just being vulnerable enough to share where you used to be and where God has you now. So, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Hey mama, do you find yourself snapping over the smallest things, like spilled milk or constant whining, then feeling horrible afterwards? If you're tired of losing your temper and you want to show up with more patience, I have something for you. It's a free training called How to Be More Patient with Your Kids so you're not screaming over spilled milk. Inside, I'll walk you through 10 simple things you can start doing today to become a calmer, more Christ-like mom, even on the hard days. To get it for free, just leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and send a screenshot to hello@emotionallyhealthylegacy.com. Or if you'd rather skip the wait, you can grab it right now for just $27. The link is in the show notes. Let's help you become the peaceful, patient mom your kids need.